What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some of the current data points, break it down on what really moved it and why tomorrow is a very important day for the broader market. So I want to go over all the things you need to know, but first make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So SoFi did go up 3.6%, 22.31 the low, 23.37 the high, and roughly around 53 million shares being traded. 70 is the average, so a little bit on the low end. But then again, it wasn't just SoFi, it's across the board. And I think that's just because of what is coming out tomorrow, aka Powell. But aside from that though, this whole price action was kind of comical. So for those of you that watched my pre-market video, I did mention that there is a good chance that SoFi does recover. And it's kind of funny because this is exactly where SoFi was trading at during the overnight yesterday, for those of you that obviously look at the overnight. But it's just a very comical price action. As far as today, there was no news from SoFi, no SEC filings. If anything, I would have anticipated SoFi to go down because of the good data. So what I mean by that is we did have a lot of data, in fact. So initial jobless claims came in at 235, consensus was 225. A little bit hotter, so of course that's not a good thing for the labor market, but that is more of a justifying reason for a rate cut. So essentially, that's kind of a win-win, right? In my opinion, I think this is what really kickstarted a lot of the Fintechs and as well in some cases growth stocks, but we did have at 8:45 good data. So leading into today, we had the flash data and also Walmart earnings. Turns out Walmart earnings, despite them kind of spreading a lot of fear, they made a ton of money, like insane amount of money. So they definitely should not complain whatsoever. But the flash data that did come out, both composite manufacturing and services, all were well above the forecast. So essentially, this is good. So it kind of shows that the economy is strong. So I feel like that really kept SoFi a little bit higher. In reality though, this did really dampen the likelihood of a cut. So for the September 17th meeting, there is a 25% likelihood of no cut. Tomorrow, this is going to change, do a complete 180, all dependent on what Powell says. So if he comes out and says, hey, you know what, we're going to continue to monitor the data, anticipate this 25 to jump up to probably 45 to 50%, in my opinion. If he comes out and kind of gives the rubber stamp saying, hey, yeah, we're probably going to be giving a cut, blah, 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 whatever he explains it as, then yeah, you'll see this jump up like crazy to probably 100%. So definitely this is going to look very different tomorrow, but nonetheless, big money was really focusing on SoFi. One thing that has been really plaguing SoFi the last 2 trading days is algorithmic trading. And today they seem to kind of, I guess, divert their attention away from SoFi. So you can even see from here, the flow, it just dropped like crazy. So that's kind of a positive thing. Even looking here, the last power hour, there was a massive flow of capital getting into SoFi. Kind of happened to Robinhood a little bit, but not to the same magnitude as SoFi. So as you can kind of see, I'm comparing Robinhood, SoFi, and Bull, so Webull. And yeah, SoFi out of the 3 kicked ass, and it was just getting a constant level of capital. And this is why I always like to bring up exactly where money and the volume comes from, because algorithmic trading is largely hollow. Hologram did get a lot of, as you can kind of see right here, algorithmic trading. And this is why you had that push lower, whereas it didn't really happen with SoFi. Sometimes this is a little bit too much information, I guess, too much deeper dive. But ultimately, the moral of the story is SoFi, behind the scenes, all the data is very, very strong. So it's kind of funny, just 2 days of fear, and we're pretty much back at the technicals where it's kind of insinuating that we will be hitting most likely the 25. So tomorrow again is going to be a big kind of big point for that. It's either going to push SoFi above that 25 or potentially break it a little bit lower. But today there was no news from SoFi, no SEC filings. It was just merely piggybacking off the broader market. Shorts, surprisingly though, did increase 303,000 shares. Not all that much, of course, but 9.42% of the free float is being shorted. Works out to be 110.9 million shares overall are being shorted. Aside from that, looking here at the options, you had 29 million in calls, 7.98 million in puts. And I know this might sound stupid, but these these dollar values is a little bit on the low end in comparison to the norm for SoFi. So in my opinion, I think just institutions that normally play SoFi through options, maybe just waiting for tomorrow just to see exactly whether we're going to be trending higher or potentially pushing lower, retesting, let's say, that $21 range. But aside from that, though, of the options, even though it was still a good amount, 46% of all of it was bullish in nature. Of the bulls, you see a consensus for it to be roughly around that $23.50 to $24 range for tomorrow. Bears are anticipating for it to be sub $22.50. With tomorrow being Friday, just take note of this. So you have 16,000 in open interest at the 25, 11 at the 24.50, 16,000 at the 24, and so forth and so forth. So best case scenario, SoFi does close above the 25, then you'll have a nice gamma squeeze rolling into next week. And then, of course, if it is able to close above that 25, just a hop, skip, and a jump away from that kind of $28 range. These are all the transactions occurring on the secondary market. So this is something I wanted to kind of bring up. There's a very much abnormal amount of transactions occurring. And so this grouping right here is a hedge fund clearly getting in. For those of you that kind of watch my video every day, 2 days ago or 2 videos ago, a hedge fund clearly did get out for whatever reason, I guess just too spooked. But this is a hedge fund getting in. Even aside from that, 2.7, 2.4, 1.7, 2.2, 1.3, all of which been done after hours. A lot more down here. So big money for whatever reason is FOMOing into SoFi into pretty much a huge day tomorrow. So a certain level of optimism. Dark pool, you're not seeing that crazy of transactions, but you do see a 3.3 million right there. Regardless, you see a ton of overall transactions. So I think today was more roughly around that 500 overall transactions above $100,000. So tons of money was getting into SoFi. And again, this is exactly what added that level of stability. One thing that could be happening though, it might be premature. I don't know if there's any stipulations on exactly when a institution or ETF has to buy a stock, but I know SoFi did get added to that, was it MSCI index, if I'm saying that correctly. And so that is effective the 26th. Of course, institutions don't just buy it on the 26th, they buy it leading into that. So possibly some of these transactions being done today were that, attributed to that. Of course, we'll never really know until the latest 13Fs ultimately, which technically for Q3 will be in like October. But nonetheless, with it closing at 23.33, it was able to successfully close above this pivot point of 23.32. So it closed 1 cent above that. After hours is kind of going down slightly, but nothing really crazy in my opinion. Aside from that though, next point to really watch for is at 24.38, and then flip side 22.26. And most likely, in my opinion, one of those two is going to be touched tomorrow, dependent on what is said. So there's a lot of high expectations for tomorrow. So in my opinion, I think that based on all the data, things that Powell was really paying attention to, and for those of you that kind of listened to his speeches, he did mention that he's really focusing on labor. And yes, the economy and the data for that was very strong, but the labor data lately has been weak. So essentially, he might actually allude to a cut. I'm sure he'll still give a good long speech about he needs to follow the data, blah, blah, blah. But in my opinion, I think the underlying tone will hint to a cut, really pushing the broader market higher. But aside from that, we'll have to wait and see what comes tomorrow. But there was no new analyst ratings. As far as articles, not really all that much, in my opinion, or worthwhile to bring up. Aside from that, though, on the actual chart, it was able to successfully close above that ALMA, so kind of breaking the 2-day trend that did happen. So it shows that it really wants to kind of expand. Stochastic RSI, a little bit on the neutral / oversold side, and that's because the last 2 trading days. So going into tomorrow, if things go good, then you'll see easily a very nice push higher. Institutions will be FOMOing in, and possibly, you never know, maybe some more buying because of that index inclusion. So yeah, pretty exciting times are ahead. Let me know your thoughts on SoFi. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? What have you been doing with SoFi? And then one final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.